Power of Women podcast. Power of Women podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Power of Women podcast. I'm Naomi Cooper-Davis and today I'm very excited. I'll be talking to Ruby Rare for an episode called The Comparison Conundrum. Ruby is a sex educator, author and Instagram favourite who readily and beautifully shares body positive, sex positive content focusing on her followers' requests. Current topics include people sharing with her about their lack of sex drive following lockdown, and she brilliantly curates content and resources based around people's needs. A kinder corner of the internet you will not find. Ruby, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's so nice hearing that. It's kind of weird when people say nice things to you. Do you kind of know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But I just want to hear that every day. If I woke up to you saying that, I'd be like, I can take on the fucking world. I'm great. This is okay.
Ruby, I can make you some affirmations. I can voice note that
Let's
shit
do
to
that.
you.
Let's do that, please.
Give you a little bit of hype just to start the day. It would be lovely. I think that's one of the things, well, we'll go into this later, but I think kind of sometimes you have to be the person to tell yourself those nice things. Remind yourself of those nice things.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to have you here in person in the Margate Arts Club.
It's so nice to do this in person again. It's been so long. I'm really enjoying it feels like a novelty to chat in person with you.
Totally. I know it feels so weird when I'm not just staring at a screen all day, but it's just so lovely. And I'm a real extrovert, so for me, like lockdown, my husband is very much an introvert. So he had a lovely time for a lot of lockdown, but I was just like, I need people that aren't you. I need to go and talk to people. So for you, dear listeners, we're not in a typical recording studio, so please do enjoy and don't worry about any echoes you hear. So Ruby, first of all, you're a new Margate resident.
I am, yeah. I moved here in February, so it's not been, I feel very settled, but it hasn't been that long and it's still lovely. I don't know, maybe partly because of lockdown, but also I think consciously I've made an effort to not move here and then be like, I have to do everything immediately. It's been like quite a natural progression and I've sort of been chilled about what I've explored. Yeah. But what I have has just been glorious. I'm completely in love with it.
Do you feel a little bit like you're on holiday every day?
No, but I do feel smug every day. I went for a swim this morning and I was the only person on the beach and I was like, this is fucking lovely. Like, no, so few people get to do this and I'm just doing it as like a regular thing. So yeah, I'm full of Margate stereotypes. I really, really love living here.
Amazing. Well, welcome. We're very, very pleased to have you.
Thanks.
So today we're going to be talking about, so obviously Comparison Conundrum is the title for the podcast. So we kind of want to talk about that you can delve into how we compare ourselves in so many different areas of our lives. And comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah, it really is.
It really is. But I wanted to start off, I really love it seems like your ethos is like pleasure first, positivity first, which I love. Dear listener, I've done a lot of research on Ruby. I was telling her that I feel like I've stalked her a little bit over the last few days online in preparation for our interview. But I really loved, I found that idea it just kind of disrupts you in a really amazing way, because it just makes you go, oh yeah, it's so easy to go straight to the negative first. So I really wanted to ask first if you would kindly share something that you love about your body.
Ooh, good question. Well, okay, I've just gone through like several things and all of them I've been like, they're quite weird to talk about.
I'm quite weird, so whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay, there are so many things that I could say and I think I have go-to answers of this, but I had a really nice moment yesterday, like clipping my toenails and filing my toenails and then painting them, and I just think feet are great. Like, feet are really cool, and I, not coming from like fetish space, even though like that's a glorious thing, it was just really nice to be sat down for like 20 minutes and just chill out with my feet. And I kind of take them for granted because they're really important. They get me everywhere I need to go, and they're very intricate and strange. And if you look at feet for too long, you can start freaking yourself out.
Yeah, you're like, what are toes?
Yeah, have you ever looked at like one toe in isolation? Because it's really strange. Yeah. So I just feel, I guess I'm walking around today feeling that bit extra grateful for my strange little feet.
That's so nice. Yeah. I always find that I don't do it enough, but whenever I do take that time to like look after my feet, give yourself a little pedicure, it's just so nice. It makes you feel like you kind of float around for the rest of the day. Yeah. It's lovely. And
I have a weird thing where I really don't like other people doing my nails. Uh-huh. I bit my nails terribly as a teenager, and the way that I could stop it was painting my nails literally every single day. And so I got really good at painting my nails, and it became like a ritual to stop biting them, and then a comfort. Mm-hmm. And I enjoy the process of doing that, whether it's my toenails or my fingernails, far more than actually having painted nails. Like, it's such a beautiful process for me. And so I really resent whenever I've gone to get my nails done that someone else is getting to do it.
Like, no, this is my job.
Yeah, and like, I know how I like to do this to myself, and you're not doing it the way that I like to do it. So I don't go and get my nails done anymore. It's just like a me time, and it's a really like ritualistic thing. And my partner actually, I moved to Margate with my lovely nesting partner, and they really hate the sound of like nails being filed. So it's even more of an incentive. I get to like lock myself away and do all of this as like a sort of strange ritualistic thing in private. There's a lot of ritual around it.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Rituals are important. We're like human beings, we're ritualistic people. Yeah. Like, we are a ritualistic animal, I think. So Ruby, what does the power of women mean to you?
Oh,
it's a bit of an abstract question, but
yeah, but it's a lovely question. I think it's really nice to come. I mean, I know that you're talking about it just like in general, but it's really lovely to move somewhere and to have that, like, to have so many different things happening in a town that are really centered on joy and lifting people up and celebrating, and also celebrating like true diversity within a community. And that doesn't mean just ticking boxes and like the appearance of diversity, but really looking at all flavors of people and activities within a town. And Power of Women Festival, I've just seen, does that in a really beautiful way. So I guess the concept of the power of women in general, like beyond that, kind of fits into that as well, of just like being happy, like celebrating like the power that all of us have, united and individually, and how different and glorious that can be. It just feels like it's a phrase that's got like so much possibility to it that feels really uplifting and wonderful.
I love that. So much possibility to it. It's true. The possibilities are endless, and I think we can so often get so caught up in like the binaries of life, in getting into our boxes. People put you in your box, and then you kind of get so conditioned into all of that it's when you start to, like, I've really found moving here as well, moving away from a city, actually, I felt gave me like the space to really to kind of reconnect with myself in a way that I hadn't realised I disconnected in the first place. You go, oh yeah, this is what I was like for a really long time, and like kind of lost elements of, you lose elements of yourself. So we want to talk about how, I mean, there are lots of statistics about how young people are feeling about themselves, how dissatisfaction with their lives. Like there was a Children's Society report this year that says that there are growing numbers of British children that are just unhappy with their lives and with how they look. So it's clear, obviously, as well, we're in a social media age, but I do feel like these are all issues that they're always there, and they resurge, and we're impacted by body image and comparison all the time. How do you think social media and things like that uniquely impact people today?
I think social media has the power to bring a lot of information and joy and positivity to people, which I try and focus on, being someone who like exists online quite a lot. But as glorious as that is, there is so much shit to wade through when it comes to being online, and it's a really hard place, and you kind of have to keep fighting for the positive bits. So it's something we're all kind of mulling through, and the age of social media is still very young, and I think we're in a kind of like weird corporatized Wild West right now, where we don't really know what this looks like or how it affects us. It's all so new, it consumes us so much. Like the other day when all the Facebook apps went down, it was not a big deal because it was just like a night, but it was really weird to think about, like, oh fuck, these 3 massive things that have all been monopolized by one corporation just govern most of our lives, and without that, like, where do we turn to? And it's not, they're really important resources, as well as being a bit destructive sometimes and feeling like they're eroding your brain. So body image plays into that massively, because we see bodies constantly. I can't remember what the exact fact is, but like we see, I might botch job this, but it's something like people who were kind of around in Shakespearean times would see as many images in their lifetime that we see in a day.
And our brains have not evolved quick enough to deal with
and
that.
that was only like 400 years ago. Like we are just constantly bombarded by images, and a lot of that is figurative, and a lot of that is kind of designed to make us compare ourselves to other people and other things. And you know, my dear friend and my work wife Rosie, we run a life drawing class together called Body Love Sketch Club, and every class she goes on like a glorious anti-capitalist rant, so I can't do it justice because she does it amazingly, but like the gist of it is saying like everything that we see in the world pretty much is designed to make us feel shit, so we buy more stuff. And it is impossible to completely rid yourself of that feeling because it's the water that we're swimming in. So it's I've definitely felt that in the past, of like being part of body positive movements and really embracing like joy and silliness and kind of thinking about the positive first, but still putting pressure on myself when I don't feel like that all of the time. But it's impossible to feel like that all of the time, because it's the world we live in. And we've kind of come so far in lots of ways. Even I'll give like a tiny example because it's just really on my mind, and I had a big conversation about this yesterday. There was an article that came out yesterday, like one of the big fashion like websites, magazines, that was saying that like low-rise skirts are back in again. and my stomach like really did a visceral squelch turn, being like, no, teenage Ruby cannot have this happen. Not a fucking again. And I'd forgotten what that felt like, and that was only like what 10-15 years ago. But it's just been a glorious decade of high-waisted things, which are far more accessible and comfortable for the majority of bodies. And to see those images again, where like in order to wear something like that, thinness is required, I'd just forgotten. And all of that is still stored in my brain and in my body. And even though I'm like a happy, chubby person wandering around the world trying to make other people feel happy and good about themselves, that terrified, fat-phobic teenage Ruby is still existing somewhere in there. And we've got to be kind to those past versions of ourselves, because we don't evolve that fast. We don't move that quickly. We're still operating with a bit of that mentality. As much as I would like to completely rid all of us of it, we've got to be honest about how we navigate the world and our bodies and the internet with all of that past bullshit that we've been taught to carry around with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I had a sort of similar... well, my reaction was actually, first of all, I was just like, why would you bring those back? They look terrible. Like, I don't even think they look... Like, what... All it is... I don't know. I just don't... I don't understand. I mean, I was a teenager in the 90s, so actually it was really interesting thinking about things in preparation for today, because I had to do the same. I was thinking about social media, and then I was like, I had lads mags. I had More magazine and Sugar and Just 17, and you had all these different conflicting things where either teenage girls learn how to do this sex act, this is what you're supposed, how to pleasure men, and that's, you know, it was all of that, or like be a good girl. All of the constant messaging, constant conflicting messaging, was there just in a different form, you know, and yeah, this idea, like obviously as well, like heroin chic was like, that was the body type.
Remember when that was cool to say?
It was called heroin chic, like the fashion industry used those. And you're just going, like, it was crazy to me. It's so interesting when you look back on it. And I think, like for me, obviously, like I'm a UK size 24, so now I'm very lucky. Now I'm so much more engaged in what I put on my body than I was as a young person, because when I was a teenager, the only place, dear listener, where you could get clothes was from Evans. But at that time, Evans really only designed clothes for middle-aged women.
Yeah.
And at that time, middle-aged women looked like women do in their 70s now. So it's like, the clothes were awful. It was that or sportswear. So I was like just always in tracky bottoms and t-shirts because that's all I could find to fit. And so I think because I've come so far in terms of how comfortable I am and being able to dress myself, I just think, like, and I know that fashion is still not accessible for everyone. There's still a lot of people, there are a lot of bigger people who can't access the same stuff. So yeah, it is really interesting to then see this like tiny little skirts that literally only, I mean, they're designed really, are they designed for like, they I don't know, they look like school skirts as well.
There's a lot of different,
so much gross stuff.
They are, I think it's also that they're designed for a very specific body type.
Yeah.
Some people will have that body type into adulthood. And also like, this is not a conversation to shame the people who are really slim and like have the body that fashion wants to dress a low-rise skirt in, because like that's a glorious, beautiful body. But the majority of bodies who are able to fit into that are kind of still going through puberty.
Yeah.
And I remember me and some girlfriends went for a drink around my birthday earlier this year. And I still think of us as young, and we were just having like, because I am, but we were like having a really nice time, having a drink, being like really giggly and just joyful and silly. And then these like 5 or 6 young women walked into the bar who I think probably were on fake IDs. Like they were really like either side of 18, probably a bit younger.
Right. And
they looked like they were fairly wealthy. We were in like the middle of town. I could imagine that they were kind of like private school girls who had a lot of money and were going out for drinks on a Thursday because they are in Gossip Girl. I don't know. But it was all of us had like this really weird reaction to them because they were carrying themselves with a maturity like they were a lot older than they were. So they sort of felt like they were older than we were. But then in bodies that I remember having of like just a really young body, and I don't know if I'm describing that well because I don't want to be as condescending, and I don't want to be like, oh gosh, you don't understand. But it was really weird seeing, like, I think more and more with young people there is social media and other things project this expectation that they should be really adult from a young age, and I felt like that, and I totally know teenage years are really hard, and whatever era you're growing up in and whatever technology you have available to you, like it's a difficult time because your hormones are like basically beating you up from the inside out. But it's a process that we all have to kind of go through, and the amount of kindness that's surrounding us I think has a big impact on our ability to get through that bit without messing ourselves up as much as possible, because we all come out of that a bit bruised because it's just weird and hard.
There's so much stuff to navigate, and like you said, it's the hormones, your body change, and those body changes as well are they're monumental. Like it's, and you're not giving yourself any of the credit for. Like I try with I've got stepkids, and they are both like one's a teenager and one's coming into their teen years, and I try to remind them, like, it's, guys, this is tough and you're going to feel really rubbish, and sometimes you're not going to understand at all where your emotions are coming from, and that's fine. Like, but I think it's such a big, everything's so big. Do they say that your teenagers have got a toddler brain but with adult emotions?
I mean, I feel like I've got that, to be honest. I don't know how much that changes. Because also I want to give, like, teenagers are also bloody incredible. And, like, having worked in schools with young people teaching relationship and sex ed for so long, teenagers are amazing, and I have so much to learn from them. It's not, I don't want to infantilize young people, because the agency and their ability to learn and teach is incredible. But it's also just that experience. I think there's a seriousness attached to lots of parts of our lives right now, which makes me feel sad, because I think we all deserve to be sillier.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think what I'm trying to get at with those young women who walked into the bar was they were just so, like, so glamorous, and all of us just looked really unpolished next to them, but they were so serious and performed, and it was,
you don't want them to lose their joy.
I kind of just wanted to, like, scruff them up a bit and be like, come and sit with us, have a fucking giggle, whatever, what are you here celebrating? Oh, that's great. But it was just seeing, like, a slightly different thing. And I probably, if I had seen myself walk into that bar, wouldn't have looked that glamorous or polished, but I would have come in with an air of, like, I want to be grown up, I want to be cool, this is the way that you do it, I'm going to be really glamorous. And I guess maybe part of that is me wanting to shake that younger version of me and be like, just go back to being a little twit, fannying around and having a silly time.
Yeah, it's fine.
Because most of my adult life has been trying to get back to being a silly child.
Yeah.
Like, having that mentality. It's what I do with most of my work. Because I think I wrote this at the start of my book, that there's this expectation when we're younger, for most of us, we are taught that we should avoid sex. All of the negatives are highlighted so much, like unwanted pregnancy, STI transmission, like when consent goes really wrong. And there's a lot of fear around it. And then at some point it just switches to, oh, you're a grown-up now, sex is something that you should be doing. When are you going to have a baby? Are you having good sex? How often are you having sex? How many orgasms are you having? Have you tried this new thing? And that jump, like, none of us are prepared for that leap. And it's really disorienting, because it suddenly feels like we're playing a game, and, like, no one's taught us the rules to it. And I guess I'm happy that more and more people are talking about it, because I think for so long I was kind of blundering my way through that transition without realising that I could just turn to people in my life and talk to them about it, going, hey, are you finding this all really hard? And then everyone else would come back to me and say, oh yeah, I'm really struggling with that. Are you as well? Oh wow, okay, well, let's talk about that. Yeah. Because I really don't think our problems are unique. We feel them in different ways, but we are all going through really similar challenges and struggles. Yeah. And the more that we share them, the better we feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, so much wisdom. Yeah, I think, so I kind of grew up, my family were very different to everyone else's. So I always liken myself to Safi from Ab Fab. So when Ab Fab started, I was like, I feel so seen. I was like, that's me. My mum wasn't quite as outrageous as Adina. She was a lot more sensible. But my mum and my dad was an old hippie, and my mum was like very much a feminist, and we always talked about a lot of stuff. Like, talking was really open in my household. And I think it's only as I've sort of become an adult myself, I've realised, like, obviously I really appreciate them now. At the time I was just like, why can't you be like everyone else's parents? You know, just like zip it and where's the dinner on the table at 5 o'clock? No, it's just so I think for me, for a long time I didn't realise just how little so many of my friends were taught about sex at home. Like one of my friends started their period at my house and she was really distressed, and my mum had to tell her what a period was because she just didn't know. And it's like, I don't know how you have a daughter and they get to like 11 or 12 and you've not even if they've not started it, but you've not broached that subject.
But there's generations of fear going on there.
Yeah.
Because if you think, it's been really useful for me thinking about this in my own life and in my work, and also in the past when I've, needed to speak to parents of school children about the RSE, the relationship and sex ed that their children are going to receive, and there's been like pushback or a bit of worry about that. You're not just thinking a young person and their parents. You've got to think about the sex ed and the environment that the parents were raised in, and that is impacted by their parents and what they were taught and the values that they were passed down from their parents. And suddenly we're getting into the Victorian era quite quickly.
Yeah.
We're not... It's easy to think that because we have smartphones and like Disney Plus and I don't know what other weird tech thing I'm going to put, like dishwashers, that's my trio, that we're like so much further evolved than people like from a few generations before us. But we're really not, and we're still carrying around loads of their values, and we're allowed to do that, and we have to be gentle with that, because you can't just push back from the things that we've been taught and have been handed down to us. We kind of have to hold them kindly and softly, because there's a lot of fear and a lot of shame that our parents and their generation and the generation before them have. So no wonder, like a parent, it's really easy for me to imagine a situation where a parent's too scared to have those conversations. It's unfair. It's not, I don't think that's right, but I think it's almost understandable given the environments that people were raised in themselves. So it's about like undoing that and acknowledging that, and not just walking into situations with outrage of being like, oh my God, it's so ridiculous that parents don't want their kids to have sex ed. But it's like, well, if they've not had that, it's really hard for them to imagine. Like people, especially I think if you're a parent, your mind can go to like worst case scenario. Yeah. If you think that someone's coming into your kid's school and showing them porn and telling them, about fisting or then you're going to be horrified. You're going to be worried. So it's about being like, no, we're not doing that.
It's all going to be age appropriate. Guys.
I can teach about that, but I wouldn't for this age range. That's it's an 18+ activity. But if you have questions, come back to me when you're 18. But it's kind of being able to do that with a sense of humour and with a lot of kindness, because these are big, scary topics. And again, still, we don't talk about them as much as we should. Yeah. Like you and I might talk about them and think about them quite a lot, but culturally, this is still very new. Yeah.
And with teenagers, do you find, do you think that teenagers are getting, do you think they're getting more open in terms of being in person? Like, do you think that they're talking amongst themselves more than previously? Because I wonder if you've kind of got the illusion of everyone being open because you've got social media there, but like, is it just that they're asking questions to a stranger and they're still not talking to their mates? And like,
it's really hard to generalize about all of teenagers, because
of course
I think what I see is just one part of like the whole bigger picture. There are certainly loads of people who are not having these conversations out of fear or like lack of education or resources, but I do think that's changing a bit. I think when I was at school, I did not hear the word consent. I heard the word consent for the first time when I was over 18, like hands down, and that I think is very unlikely for school-aged young people today. Consent might not be taught in a way that I would like it to be, but it is still being acknowledged. It's still being it's in the room
there.
So I think that changes things massively, and things are changing and things can be really positive. From my experiences, especially working with queer young people, they're talking loads, and they know far more than I do. Oh my God. Like that's my favourite things, are going to like queer youth groups and just being sat down being like, tell me about stuff.
Guys, what's going on?
Because I thought I knew loads of things, but I don't. So please enlighten me, please inform me. And I think there are more people and there's more confidence, which I hope partly is down to social media and seeing these conversations happen from afar. I think I'd really like to think that more young people have more confidence to have these conversations. That doesn't mean all, that doesn't mean loads, but I do think more.
And it's moving in the right direction. Yeah, that's really good. I'm interested. Who did you compare yourself to as a teenager? Did you find yourself doing that?
Ooh, yeah, I did. Who did I compare myself to? Okay, the first person, I want there to be like a more exciting example. I grew up with the OC.
Oh, yeah.
I loved the OC. It has aged so badly.
Most of those 90s shows have.
And me and one of my best mates were like, okay, you be Marissa and I'll be Rachel. And I had a poster of Rachel Bilson. Wilson? Yeah. On my wall. And I remember once a plumber came into our house and asked me if that was me. And I was like...
Yes, it is.
Oh my God, my life is over. Little did I know, that was also like sort of closeted queer kid. It's like, oh, I wonder why I had just like gorgeous women all around my room. It's not just because I like what they were wearing. But there was definitely a kind of, that was an era where like California was so cool, and as like a sort of Southeast London kid who was very far away from that life.
It's sunny all the time.
Well, and also maybe I think there was a way of me kind of understanding my dual heritageness through tanned American white people, because I looked I had the skin tone a bit like them.
Yeah.
It wasn't because I was tanned, it's just because I'm Sri Lankan. So again, that was a way of like me assimilating with, like, assimilating is maybe the wrong word, but I kind of got to scapegoat my otherness through that. And yeah, I mean, she was just completely beautiful and gorgeous, and I aspired to be.
And she was really funny.
And she was kind of a bimbo and used her body and her sexuality, but then got kind of badass and smart. And I liked that. And so I think there are definitely a lot of unhealthier like comparisons that I did have and I was making, but that was like a very pure early teenage years one, where she was just really like cool, and I definitely fancied her.
Understandable.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a weirder one as well. I don't know. It's
so funny. I'm mixed race as well. My dad's Jamaican, and so for me, I didn't compare myself to them, but I had this conversation with a friend of mine who's also mixed race, and we both when Darling Buds of May came on, guys, I'm that old. Catherine Zeta-Jones, we were like, is she, maybe she might not be white, she's sort of similar to us. And it was like having that just like, this is a brown, an olive skinned woman. maybe and I mean, she's not, she's white, but it is like looking for yourself. I think it's so important.
And isn't it interesting that was in our youth, that was diversity.
That's how white people were.
It's like she's slightly olive skin. Oh my God.
Like I have conversations with people about this, and like I don't think, because I grew up in Kent, and like I didn't look like everyone else in the same room. Like when and it's sometimes difficult for people to understand, because I'm white presenting. Most people assume that I'm white, so I'm, and I've always been very aware that that's how the world perceives me. But when you're in a room full of people whose background is mostly like, there's just a lot of blonde people at my school. Pretty much everyone was blonde, with a few brunettes. But it is, and you're just looking for someone who looks similar to you. I think that's one of the things that I love about social media, is that anyone can find their people, or anyone can find someone that they relate to. Like, it is incredibly powerful in that. I think that would be, as like little baby Naomi would have loved that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I'd seen other people who were mixed race in a way that I felt really connected to, that would be amazing. Because I grew up in Lewisham, my school was very mixed, and I wasn't just surrounded by white people, but even within that, I was perceived, and I perceived myself to be white for basically my whole adolescence. And my mum and my sister and I have had loads of conversations about that, because we all kind of did it without realising. Like, my mum ticked, like in the ethnicity boxes, my mum ticked white British for both me and my sister for our childhoods. And just none of us thought about it. And then suddenly it was like, oh gosh, well, you don't tick that box, mum.
Yeah.
So if you don't, why are we ticking it?
Yeah.
And in the same way, if I had seen, I did not have that many queer role models as a younger person, and there were like some gay people on the telly, but I was still growing up in an era where the L and the G were the two ones that you saw, and there was nothing else really. And if I'd seen more queer people and like a wider variety of queer people,
and like actual queer people, because so often it was it was a really stereotypical, like I would just remember so many things from programs that we used to watch, and at the time it felt wrong, and I was like, ugh, like there's stuff especially in Friends, there's some real stuff in there, you just go, and I was always like, what are you doing? Why is a woman playing a trans woman? Like, this is this is no, this is all wrong. And it's just, when you kind of realise, like, for so many kids, that's just what they were seeing, so they never saw that. And
it's hard to, comparison is the thief of joy, but it's also impossible to compare yourself to something that you don't see. Like, I didn't have like pan queer people in my life, and I'm the kind of person, I kind of need to see stuff in order to visualize it for myself. I find it hard to just generate that from within myself. So it was only really when I started to see bisexual people that I was like, you know what? I think that really looks like me. And what is nice is that I think for lots of people, there is more of an opportunity to see different things. And it can be beautiful, and it can be like a real like invitation to self-discovery. It can also be an invitation to like hate on different marginalized communities, and for there to be a lot more like threats and just like horrible rhetoric online as well. It's not all positive, but for those of us who don't fit in the boxes that were prescribed to us, it's really useful to be able to see more and more people doing things slightly differently, and not just taking those rules that were given to us by the generation before and just taking them and rolling with them, actually stopping and going, that bit doesn't really work for me, maybe I'm going to change this, maybe I'm going to tweak this. And I think way more people do that than we are aware of, and it doesn't need to be done in like a big grand public way. You don't need to like perform your identity to anyone. It's about how it feels for you, but just remembering that you can give yourself the permission to do that, because we often forget that we're allowed to. And
sometimes you just need just having that visual representation gives you that permission. That's so powerful. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how body confidence and comparing yourself, like you were saying earlier as well, comparing your sex life with your friends and things like that. How do those things play into impacting your sexual relationships?
I mean, massively. And anyone who says that they don't is lying. Because we all feel like this. To different extents and at different times. But the way that it's been really useful for me thinking about it like this, and Emily Nagoski, who wrote Come As You Are, is kind of like, I think for many people, myself included in the industry, is kind of like the fairy godmother of this insight and this research and information. Thinking about sex doesn't exist in a vacuum in our lives. It is constantly surrounded by context of the other shit that's going on in our lives. So we can't remove, like when we get into a sexual environment, into like a sexy headspace, as much as we would like to just not bring the rest of the stuff going on in our lives into it, it trickles in, it comes in, it can't not. And so whatever is going on in your life that is creating kind of stress or insecurity or worry, it can have a really big impact in your life. And that could be, you know, oh God, I've got to call my mum later, or I haven't taken the bins out yet. Yeah. Oh fuck, I've got to do that after this. Ugh, that's going to be really boring. And it can also be so much to do with our bodies and the way that our bodies look, the way that our bodies feel and smell, the sounds that we make, what our bodies can do or not do. I think kind of pleasure-based like performance plays into all of that a lot as well. And, you know, depending on your genitals, there might be different worries about like being not wet enough, too wet, too soft, too hard, all of it, like all the different things. Our bodies are absolutely incredible, and I think the difference that everyone's like uniqueness in their bodies is something to be celebrated. But because of this like oversaturation of a certain body type that we've all kind of created culturally and in our minds, it's also the variety of our bodies can also be a massive source of insecurity if you don't look like how other people look. Like I had, when I started watching porn as a teenager, and I'm lucky actually because I've got other friends who really clung on to this, and I didn't, because I was like, oh yeah, I guess I'm different. There were other things that I was so insecure about. But I remember watching porn, and all of the women in porn, all the people with vulvas in porn had like really pink vulvas. And I was like, well, I don't have that. Mine's brown.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, it's just because I'm not a full white person. That's the way it is.
We have brown vulvas.
Yeah, we've got brown vulvas. We've got brown nipples. And I love my brown nipples and my brown vulva. But I wasn't taught that was the thing that was normal. And I've got a friend who was so insecure about that for years. And I had my own insecurities going on, but all of those things really factor in. And then we're not only dealing with our own worries, we are often projecting the disgust that we are predicting our partner to have and keeping that all in our own brains.
God,
have you done that?
So many times.
Because
so many times.
Some people are assholes and might be thinking the thing that you're worried that they're thinking. Yeah. But most of the time they're not.
No.
Most of the time they're quite happy that they're about to have sex.
Yeah, always. I mean, I think I was about 27 or 28 when I realised that if someone is in your bed, it's because generally they want to be there and they're just going to have a nice time.
Yeah.
And they're really not worried about anything else.
Yeah.
Or they're worried about their own stuff. They're spending so much time worried about how they're going to perform, what's happening with their body. What you're thinking about them. Yeah.
So I'm kind of, the way that's been really useful for me is not trying to put pressure on myself to get rid of those worries and insecurities because they exist, they're there, but really trying to scrape that layer of all of the worry and panic about how someone else is going to see you. Just try and put that in the bin. Yeah. Because and if you can't just put it in the bin, acknowledge it and say it to someone. Say it to like other people in your life who you're not sleeping with. Say it to that partner if you want to. I think that can be really important, of just being like, I'm finding it really hard to get into the headspace for this, or to switch off because I'm really worried about how I look, and if you think that looks nice, or I'm really worried about if I'm not going to be able to have an orgasm, like if you're going to think badly of me, or if I'm going to come really quickly, or whatever it is. Because at least then it's acknowledged and it's out in the open, and it's not in your own brain festering away and getting bigger and bigger and scarier. So that, just like having the confidence to have those conversations and acknowledge how you're feeling, that doesn't mean you need to solve the problem, but I do really think it helps just letting it be out in the open. It makes it feel a bit less intimidating. Yeah, absolutely. And communication is everything. Like, and the minute and communication just starts with you going, this is really awkward. Yeah. Like, I've been married for 3 years, been with my husband, we've been together for 8 years, right? And there are times when a subject comes up, we're really good communicators, but still sometimes the way we start a conversation is, we need to talk about this. Okay, we'll do it tonight when the kids are in bed. And then it starts with one of us going, and just like blurting it out. Yep. And then it's fine, and then we relax, and then we have a chat, and then we have a laugh about it, and like, but often it starts that way. And I think that we really both realise that we're both like
inside, I think I'm probably a 12-year-old boy inside, and he's the same. So we kind of we know that's how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's just the way we do things.
Yeah. I think that's so important to acknowledge. A really useful thing that Alison Moon, who wrote Girl Sex 101, which is like a brilliant book and graphic novel. This is in her book. I'm sure that other people do different versions of it, but talking about like a communication sandwich. If you, to start a conversation, saying, there's something I want to talk to you about, and then the like meaty or meat alternative bit of the sandwich is about what you're worried about in terms of that conversation. Like,
right.
I feel really nervous about having this conversation because I don't really know how to say this. I'm worried that you're going to think I'm silly. I'm worried about hurting you. I don't want you to think less of me. Whatever it is, just so that that's prefaced there. And then the other side of the sandwich going, okay, so the thing I want to talk about or the thing I need to tell you is this.
Yeah.
And that is so much better as a way of communicating for yourself, because you're sharing your feelings and you're not like having to keep hold of them and keep them in line, because that's quite hard work. And it's also softly letting someone come into the conversation with you. It's not just being like
black at them.
I was going to think of an example and I couldn't. Like, you know, it also gives someone an opt out or a kind of negotiation moment of being like, okay,
Yeah.
I really want to talk to you about this, but I can't right now for whatever reason. Can we do it later? Or for someone to give some reassurance and just be like, oh wow, okay, well, I really hope that whatever you say, like, I really don't think that I'm going to look at you differently unless you've like killed someone.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of immediately, it's a bit like you're like, oh, this is awkward. It sort of softens things a little bit, because we can get very earnest about this stuff, about communicating and about sex. And I just want people to feel more able to be playful with it and a bit sillier and a bit more inquisitive and curious and like able to get things wrong sometimes and work through it, rather than it being like, oh god, I tried to talk about this thing and it didn't work, so I guess I'm just never going to talk about it again. Or like, we tried to do this sex act and it was a disaster, and so now I'm a failure and I'm just never going to do it again.
It's like, that's it. Sometimes you've got to go back, you've got to do a bit of planning, and you've got to, you know, sometimes there are steps to get to a place. I think a lot of the time we do, it's really easy to go, oh God, well, I'm sure everyone does this and it's really easy, and this person's decided that they're going to, you know, like, I don't know, we're all supposed to be having anal sex, but no one knows how to do it properly. Like, no, like there's a way. It's like not expecting everything. Sorry, that was a really hard place to go in on the podcast. But it is one of those,
about fisting, we're fine.
That's true. It is one of those things though that I think people think like, you're just supposed to know how to do it and just do it, and that's that.
None of us are experts at having sex.
No.
None of us. Like, I'm a nerd about sex and I love talking about it, and I've, you know, like probably I've read and researched more than the average person, but I'm not an expert. I know my own body, but I don't know how to have sex with someone else until I'm having sex with them. Yeah, because they're an individual. We're learning and we're figuring it out. And like to put that expectation that we all should be like sexual athletes who are perfect and like are just like constantly trying to beat our like personal best record every time. It's like, where's the fun in that? Come on.
There's no joy in that.
Yeah. It's not a race. It's like, I don't know, sex is more like a panto or something.
You heard it here first, guys. Sex is a panto.
Coming into panto season, I'm gonna have that one.
It's a lot of thigh slapping.
He's behind you.
That is how I'm going to think of sex from now on. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
So I know we're going to sort of wrap things up, but I just wondered if we could end on, do you have any sort of tips or anything that you've learned for yourself about how to maybe if people are finding body positivity difficult, like a starting point or something that you think is helpful?
So these are all initial ideas, and please like build on them. You're the expert in how to do this for yourself. But some starting points are, if you follow anyone on social media who makes you feel shit about yourself, please unfollow them. Even if they're people in your life, like you could, or just get removed from your food or mute them or anything, because that stuff really eats away at us if you're looking at that involuntarily just every day. Please spend time with your bodies in whatever way makes sense for you. That you don't need to go full nudist, gazing at yourself in the mirror, although I think that's a lovely thing to do if you feel so inclined. But spending time to like properly connect with your body, and that could be through like having a really good dance. You know?
Yeah,
like,
dance is so... That's how I got... That was like my way into loving my own body, because I loved moving. I could move my body, you know, what some people would class as well. I'm a good dancer. But I just loved it. I just absolutely loved it. And I think knowing that you know, rather than you putting all of your hopes on your body performing a certain function in a certain way that someone else is telling you, you're like, this is what feels good. I think it's really important to be connected to your body in terms of how it feels, how it makes you feel.
Yeah. And focusing on the feel rather than the look is really important, because we can get so caught up in the external appearance. And like, I know that weighs heavily on all of our minds, but thinking about yourself from the inside out, like internally, is good. And if ever there are days when you're feeling really terrible about yourself, I've done this a lot in the past, get a piece of paper, write down all the things that you are feeling awful about in terms of your body, in terms of your life, in terms of what's going on. Get it all out on a piece of paper, and almost like a stream of consciousness, just like write it all. And then I make myself turn the piece of paper over, and I don't get up until I've filled it with nice things.
Oh, that's such a good idea.
And they can be really small. And when I started doing that, it was so hard. I found it really hard to fill a page of nice things, even if it's just like, I have nice eyelashes, or like, I'm breathing right now. Breath's cool, isn't it? It doesn't need to be like, oh, I've got, you know, like a really good, I don't know, whatever body. It's not about judging you like that, but it's kind of just giving yourself permission to notice the things that you're also grateful for, not rejecting the negatives, but letting the positives and the negatives sit alongside each other. And over time, I now find it quite hard to write a full page of the negative stuff.
That's amazing.
And I was not like that at the beginning.
Yeah.
So, time, patience, kindness.
That's so good. Ruby, thank you so much. I could talk to you and listen to you all day long.
We'll just have to do more chats. That's fine.
We'll do more chats that aren't recorded. Thank you so much for joining us on the Power of Women podcast.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to, before we go as well, I just want to say everyone needs to go and buy Sex Ed, A Guide for Adults by Ruby Rare from your local booksellers. It is brilliant. It is a brilliant book. And you are just a brilliant, beautiful person.
Yay. Thank you. That's so nice to hear. So are you.
So that wraps up the comparison conundrum. We covered a lot of ground. Keep your trusted friends close, write those gratitude lists, and if you still want to make changes, ask yourself, what do you want? Why do you want it? And what do you need to do to make it happen? And sit with it. Seek therapy if you feel you need it. Have healthy breaks away from your phone and social media. Spend time with loved ones and just look out for each other. Until next time, thank you for listening to the Power of Women podcast. I've been Naomi Cooper Davis. Goodbye.
Power of Women podcast. Power of Women.